Good morning, Harvester. How are you all doing today? Good. I'm so glad that you all have joined us on our student takeover service. I'm so excited for that. Not that I'm biased because I'm the student pastor, but I am really excited about it this morning. So in the spirit of student takeover, I want to start off our time together today with a game. Okay, and it doesn't require much from you. You can stay in your seats. We're not going to be throwing anything at anybody. But this is a game that I like to call What is Gustavo Doing? This is our campus pastor. So how this game is going to work is I'm going to show you a cropped picture of our campus pastor, Gustavo, and then you are going to have to, either with your neighbor, by yourself, figure out or try to decipher what is happening in the rest of the picture. And we'll play 3 rounds of this. So let's go ahead and get started with this first round here. All right, this first round, we got Gustavo. He's wearing a tie. He's looking dapper and handsome. He's got somebody's arm around him. So what do you think might be going on in the rest of this picture? You can talk amongst yourselves. You can talk out loud if you want to. All right, this one's a little bit easy. Let's go ahead and see the whole picture. He is at his son Caleb's wedding, holding Caleb. What a great picture. I love that picture. All right, let's go to round 2. Let's see what round 2 is. All right, this one, he's focused on something. He's at his house. It's a kind of a creepy picture. I did not take it, which actually that makes it more creepy. But we have Gustavo's really focused in on something. Any idea, talk amongst yourselves. Try to think about what might be going on in this picture. All right, let's see. What do we got? If you guessed that he was playing against me in Guitar Hero, you guessed correctly. All right, let's see our last one. This one's my favorite one. All right, he's got an intense face. Very intense. Letting some anger out. All right, let's see what this might be. If you guessed that he was smashing a pumpkin with a sledgehammer, you are correct. So thank you for playing this game. I love these kind of games where you see like just a small part of a picture, and then you can try to guess, and it could be anything, it could be nothing, and then you see the whole picture, and you're like, yes, of course, that was Gustavo smashing a pumpkin with a sledgehammer. How did I ever not know that it wasn't? And that's because understanding our perspective gives us context. Our perspective of things informs how we see the world, how we see what is going on. Gus's face changes whenever we see what he is doing. And that's what we're going to be talking about today is what is our perspective and why is that important? And I think understanding our perspective is important. It was put in a very obvious way to me. I got to spend a couple of weeks in July at our camps with our students. I got to go to CIY with our high school students, and I got to go to camp with some of our middle school students. And so going into and being able to step into their world, especially as a student pastor, it is very humbling. It's an honor, but also it is a little bit scary because it makes me feel old and out of touch sometimes. For instance, at our middle school camp, I was in charge of running a game where I had to get some Gen Z terminology, and I really don't know any of it, so I asked some of my high school students for help, and I did not know what any of it was. I felt very dumb, but it was good to know their perspective and kind of see things from their angle. At CIY, though, on a more serious note, I was able to lead a small group of about 10 high school guys from different backgrounds, from different campuses. And I think my favorite part of the whole week was getting to just sit with them and to discuss how Jesus was working in their lives, to be able to hear them like just kind of tee off the conversation, and I could just let them run with it, and they would talk about Jesus and share different things and ask each other difficult questions. And it was so honoring to be able to see Jesus from their perspective a little bit. Now, here's the thing is I recognize with myself that I will, unless I choose to engage with them at these kind of things, I will only ever see the world from my perspective. That if I don't choose to step out of myself, that I will miss out, that I will misunderstand, because not having the right perspective leads to interpreting events wrongly. Now, today is my daughter's birthday. She's turning 3 today. She's here. She was sitting in here. She sat through the whole sermon first service, which was very surprising. my wife got a bunch of stuff to throw both of our kids a birthday party this weekend because my son's birthday was on Friday. And for a couple of days, whenever we had all of it, my daughter just kept going into our room and getting it all out. And we were like, no, not today, not today. And we'd like usher her out gently out of the room, like, we're not doing this right now. And on Saturday or Friday, I came into our room and she had everything laid out very neatly on our bed. And I was like, Lydia, like, we're not getting ready for the party right now. Like, let's go. And she just starts weeping and bawling. And so I carry her out. I'm like, she was getting in the decorations again. And Sarah was like, well, I told her that she could get out the decorations because we're getting them ready for the party. I was like, oh, like having the right perspective totally changes things. And that's a small example, but on a bigger scale, that can lead to us misunderstanding other people or missing out on conversations with people or missing out on perspective, leading us to interpret other people, interpret other events incorrectly. And I think whenever I think about it with our students and being the student pastor, I think to myself is I am not always going to be the perfect person to lead students to find and follow Jesus because I have an incomplete view of what that means. I can only see things from my perspective, and none of us have a perfect perspective. And so we have to ask ourselves, what is my perspective? What is your perspective on leading people to find and follow Jesus? What is your perspective on that? And I think it's important that we ask ourselves this because we can often misunderstand what Jesus has in mind for us because we are trying to lead others to him or we're trying to follow him solely from our limited perspectives. And so this morning we're going to be in the book of Matthew. We're going to be in Matthew chapter 9, and we're going to look at Jesus' perspective a little bit on on how he views us, how he views what it means to lead people to him, and what that means for us. So we're going to be in Matthew 9, like I said. We're going to start in verse 35. But before we get there, if you look at the rest of this chapter that we're in, we'll see that Jesus is right in the middle of his ministry. That the preceding verses in this chapter are all about him teaching and healing people. He brings a girl back from the dead. He calls the disciple Matthew. He teaches about fasting, does a lot of ministry in this chapter. He has been in this area of Galilee where he grew up in for a long time among these people and working among them. And he knows these people. He knows what they're going through. He knows the kinds of people they are. And we pick up in verse 35, kind of at the end of this segment of a lot of highlights of his ministry, where it says this: "And Jesus went throughout all the cities and villages, teaching in their synagogues and proclaiming the gospel of the kingdom and healing every disease and affliction." Jesus' mission up to this point has mostly been caring for people, it's been healing people, it's been teaching, which can be hard and exhausting. It is exhausting to care for people, much less crowds of people all the time. And reading this, my question then is, what perspective did Jesus have that gave him so much determination to do this? Yes, that he is God, but he is also determined to care for these people. What is his motivation here? And I love that as we go into verse 36 here, that it continues with a little bit of his perspective. It says this: "And when he saw the crowds, he had compassion for them because they were harassed and helpless like sheep without a shepherd." Now, I think there's a few things here that are noteworthy about Jesus' perspective that are shared here. We get a little bit of insight into his thinking here. The first thing is this, that he saw the crowds. Now, there's the obvious side of it where he saw the people in the crowd, but I think there's a deeper thing to it, that Jesus not only acknowledged the people that were there, but he saw the crowds of people, which is hard to see people, because these are people that are following him around that need him, that are not in glamorous situations, that these are people that are downtrodden, that they are harassed, like he says, that he has tax collectors that are following him, which were considered traitors. He has lepers, which were cast off from society, that there were Gentiles that were not necessarily a part of his mission, but were still seeking him out anyways, that there were Samaritans who were not considered people that were coming to Jesus, that there were fishermen that were following him, that were like the lowest of low laborers, that Jesus entered these people's lives. When we read these stories, that Jesus engages them where they are at. He's not acknowledging them and then moving on, that even if it's for a brief moment of time, he sees these people for who they are, where they are at, and he acknowledges those situations that they're in, that he sees people for who they are and where they are at. The second thing is this, is that he had compassion. Now, I think compassion is an interesting word because we often kind of mix it together with pity and with empathy, and I think it's important to make this distinction here. Because whenever we hear compassion, a lot of us think of pity, which is where somebody is looking at our situation from a distance, or we're looking at somebody's situation from a distance, and it's kind of like this lowly, like, oh man, that's terrible that you're in that situation, and it's kind of hands off. And nobody wants to be pitied. Nobody wants pity. It's very dehumanizing a lot of times to feel pity, and nobody wants that. It's important to make that distinction that compassion is not pity. But then compassion is also more than empathy, where empathy is looking at somebody and saying, I understand your situation, I understand what you're going through, but I'm not necessarily doing anything about it. Like, I think about empathy, I think about counseling or therapy, that it's a good thing that somebody is there, that they're trying to understand you, but they're not necessarily somebody that's going to step out and help you physically get out of that situation or come alongside you and get you out of that situation. It's not necessarily drawn to action. And here's the thing, is that Jesus has compassion, which is empathy that is moved toward somebody, that is moved towards action, is moved towards stepping into somebody's situation. And Jesus' whole ministry while he was here on earth was one of compassion, that it started with him leaving the right hand of the Father God in heaven and stepping down and becoming human, becoming like one of us, and with compassion stepping into our world and in our situation. To think about for a second that the God of the universe had compassion on us who were lowly and far and cast off from him. And this compassion of Jesus has always moved him toward us. He always moves toward us. And here's the thing, is that he moves towards us, he sees us, he moves towards us, but then he also knows the lost, that Jesus knows the lost. And here he talks about how they're harassed and helpless, that they're cast off, they're downtrodden, and he says that they are like sheep without a shepherd, which means that they are lost. Now, I don't know if any of you know a lot about sheep, but sheep are really dumb. And so my initial thought is, is he moves into that. It's like, what does he mean by calling people sheep? It's not that he's trying to say anything negative about anybody, but he's saying more about how he views his mission here, and that there are sheep, that there are people out there that are lost, that need somebody to lead them, and Jesus sees himself as that person to lead them. And I think he gives a great insight into this perspective in Luke 15 with a parable of the lost sheep. So in Luke 15, he starts in verse 3, and he's being accused here of being too friendly and too close with those that are Gentiles, with those that are sinners. And so this is his response here that he gives. So he told them this parable. What man of you, having 100 sheep, if he has lost one of them, does not leave 99 in the open country and go after the one that is lost until he finds it? And when he has found it, he lays it on his shoulders, rejoicing. And when he comes home, he calls together his friends and his neighbors, saying to them, rejoice with me, for I have found my sheep that was lost. Just so I tell you, there will be more joy in heaven over one sinner who repents, than over 99 righteous persons who need no repentance. And this gives us some more insight on how Jesus views his mission of being drawn to compassion, and how he views and sees us as people that are far from him. Is one, he knows this, that the lost are in danger. Sheep are really good at putting themselves into dangerous situations. Sheep get lost all the time. They fall off cliffs. They get stuck in weird places, that they are really good at putting themselves into danger. And there's something to be said for us as well, that we know how to put ourselves into situations where we unknowingly or unintentionally end up in places that we don't want to be, or we stray from the shepherd of Jesus without knowing how to get out. But Jesus sees his role then as the shepherd that leads us back to him, that he steps in and he sees that we are in danger. He sees that there is the danger of eternal separation from him, the dangers of sin, the dangers of destruction in our lives. And that the sheep being missing is enough to move him into action. The lost being missing is enough to move him into action. The second thing is this, that the lost are valuable to Jesus. The lost are valuable to Jesus. That he goes to great lengths to find them. The shepherd goes to great lengths to find their sheep. Whenever I was a teenager, we did this program, this Christmas program at the Harvester St. Charles campus where I grew up at, and I played one of the shepherds one year, and at the end of the night, we had to take the sheep back to their pen where they were being kept, and it was up this giant hill. And for some reason, they gave me, this little scrawny dude, the biggest sheep. And this sheep did not want to go anywhere. He just sat down, and he was not going anywhere. So I ended up, dragging and pushing this sheep up this hill because he was determined that finding sheep and bringing them back is not easy. You have to go to great lengths to find them. They find themselves in dangerous situations. They might not want to be moved sometimes, but Jesus knows they're in danger, and the shepherd knows that they are in danger and goes and seeks them out. And I don't know the value of what a sheep is, but the shepherd does. He knows that 99 out of 100 is not enough. And that's the same thing with how Jesus sees us. That he sees that just because there are a bunch of people that are saved, that is not enough for him. And he sees that they are valuable, that every single one is valuable. And not only that Jesus desires to be reunited with the lost. That not only does he want to be reunited with the lost, he wants that relationship to be restored. And that shows that Jesus views those that are far from him as being somebody that he wants to bring back in. That there's rejoicing whenever the sheep are brought back in. There's rejoicing whenever the lost are brought back in. It's not pity, it's not empathy, it's compassion, it's a movement into being with and bringing them out. That Jesus reveals here that he has a divine compassion that leads to being with us because he sees us in danger, that he sees us as people that are worth saving, and that there is a joy in us being reunited with him. And so Jesus' perspective then is that those that are lost, that are wandering, that are wounded, are ready to be brought back to him. And he shares this with his disciples, and going back to Matthew 9 and verse 37. It says, "Then he said to his disciples, 'The harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few.'" Now he switches his analogy here from sheep and shepherds to a harvest. And I think about what is this harvest and why is it plentiful? Because elsewhere in the New Testament, the harvest is used as a sign of judgment, and that's not really the same language that he's using here. That there's no anger here. It's a positive thing. That the harvest is those that are ready to receive Jesus out there. That those out there are needed and ready to be brought in. I imagine that as Jesus is talking to his disciples, that they're kind of standing there with them looking at this giant crowd of people, and Jesus is motioning to the crowd, almost as if encouraging his disciples. He's like, hey, these people out here are ready for me. They're ready to receive me. And that there are people right in front of them that are ready to receive the gospel, the hope of Jesus. And there are people right in front of us that are ready to embrace Jesus, that need Jesus, to know that Jesus sees them with compassion and he wants to move towards them in that. You know, the harvest is the friend of yours that is going through a difficult time, that needs a phone call every so often, or you need to take them to lunch and just care for them and listen. Or it's your neighbors that you may have a good relationship with and that you need to build up the courage to share the gospel of Jesus with. Or it's the neighbors that you don't really talk to that much and you need to power through an awkward conversation to show them the love of Jesus. It's the people you get sat next to at school. It's your enemies. It's your family. It's the people all around us that we may not know where their hearts are at or if they're ready or not. But Jesus, the shepherd, does. He sees that they're ready and he wants them to be brought in. Because people are ready. People are searching for something to hold on to. We know that the world we live in is not perfect. It is dark, and it is hard, and it's painful sometimes. And that person that can lead them out of that is Jesus. But not only is the harvest plentiful, which is great, but he says here that the laborers to go out there and to bring them in are few. Because it's hard work to harvest. It's hard work to care for people, to move towards compassion, because it requires sacrifice. It requires us to have our perspective lined up with that of Jesus's. So then the question we have to ask ourselves then is, does my perspective match up with Jesus's? Are you moved to compassion when you see the situations and dangers that people find themselves in? Are you moved to compassion to see the value that they have to Jesus? Are you willing to go to uncomfortable lengths to seek them out and to share the hope of Jesus and try to bring them in and rejoice whenever they get here? Because the temptation for us is to do one of two things, I think, to go one way or the other in this. One temptation is to do nothing, to see the world as dark and evil and to view it as our enemy that we must conquer, to see people around us as obstacles or an inconvenience. And I think the thing is that oftentimes we do this unintentionally, that we have this mindset towards other people that they are obstacles, that they are our enemy. But I tell you what, it's pretty hard for us to see even our worst enemies in the same light whenever we see them through Jesus' perspective of that they are somebody that is lost, that is valuable to Jesus, and that he wants to see brought home so that he can rejoice over that. The other side of this is to be complacent and to just be comfortable and to view the world as our home and that people will figure out their own ways, that I don't need to get in anybody's way. And I think a lot of this is unintentional too, but we have to recognize Jesus' perspective is also one of urgency, that Jesus was moved to compassion to act immediately, that he moved in and was with these people. And it's the same for us as well. This place is not our home, but it is the place where Jesus has called us to be at, to carry out his mission. And so our perspective then needs to be one of compassion like Jesus's. Our perspective needs to show the compassion of Jesus. And the first thing that we have to remind ourselves of, or that you need to know, is that Jesus has compassion toward you. That Jesus sees you in the situations in your life and the difficulties you face and the hardships that you face. And he knows what you're going through. And he has compassion. And he wants to remind you, for you to know that he cares for you, that he sees you, that he wants you to be reunited with him. And for those of us that follow Jesus, we need to be reminded of this constantly, because it is easy to forget. We are forgetful people, and we forget how good our God is. And so whenever we know that compassion, then we can turn and step out into compassion. And he finishes this here in verse 38. Therefore, pray earnestly to the Lord of the harvest to send out laborers into this harvest. So if we know the compassion of Jesus, we have to have that first, because if we try to bring people to him on our own, or we try to follow him from our own perspective, it's going to fall short. He has passed on the mission of bringing the harvest in, of bringing the lost in to us with the Holy Spirit to fulfill the mission of caring for them. Now, I think the really interesting and cool thing about this is that the first thing that Jesus asks us to do is not to go out and do a bunch of things, but he asks us first to pray. That he asks us to pray for the laborers. And I think this is really important, because when we start by praying and asking God to do something, we are stepping out of our side of ourselves. We are recognizing that this mission is not our mission, but it is Jesus' mission first. That we are fulfilling his mission by his Holy Spirit. And we are doing his mission. It is not our mission. We have to acknowledge that it's him who is doing the work through us. And so for us, it's not about working harder or how many people did we bring to church on our own. It's about being faithful and mindful of the mission that Jesus has set out for us. And we have to remember that first by acknowledging that he is the one that is doing the work. But as we are praying for the laborers, then we need to be ready to be called a laborer. Okay? If you're praying for laborers, then you need to also recognize that God may grab you out and say, all right, it's time for you to go and to get in there and to be compassionate. Jesus has placed people in your life right now that are ready to receive him. And we may know it, we may not know it. And our job is to be compassionate and to move towards them, to be praying for those opportunities, to seek those opportunities. And it is difficult, that it's difficult to have a conversation with a friend of ours that may not know Jesus or is antagonistic towards Jesus, or to have to invite somebody over and over and over again, or have the awkward conversation whenever somebody says no, or just ignores you whenever you try to invite them to church. We have to be ready to be called a laborer, and in that is important that we pray that our perspective would be like Jesus'. Because if we try to do all of the work on our own perspective, we are going to get burnt out, we are going to fail, and so we need to pray that our perspective would be like Jesus's. That maybe today you need to know what Jesus' perspective is of you, that you are lost from him and that he cares for you. You are valuable to him, that he wants you to be brought back to him, that he died for you, that he rose again for you, and that he wants you to be brought to him. And once you see that perspective, and if you see that perspective, to then pray that you would be willing and ready to go out there. And for either one of those after service, we would love to pray with you in that. One thing I love about our church building, like this building specifically, is that it gives us an opportunity, us as the staff especially, an opportunity to be able to be face-to-face and see people that we may not normally get the opportunity to. Our building's kind of in disguise. It's a strip mall. It's right in the middle of town, so we get all kinds of different people, and we always joke that you never know who's going to walk through the office doors during the week. And there's a lot of crazy, awesome things and crazy, just plain crazy things that have happened. But one story of compassion that really stands out to me is a couple of years ago, I had some work that I needed to get done before Sunday, and for some reason, I just decided I needed to do it on Saturday, which I don't ever come up here on Saturdays. And I came up here, and the person that cleans our building she was here, and I came in, and there was a girl standing in the lobby. Like, the cleaning lady had just left the doors unlocked, and there was this girl just standing in the lobby. And I went and talked to her, and she was kind of cagey, and she said, oh, yeah, I just want some more information about the church. So I talked to her about it a little bit, and was kind of unsure of how to handle the situation. You know, I didn't want to leave her here by herself. I wasn't really sure what was going on. I felt like there was something else going on as well. So I texted Gustavo, our campus pastor, and I just asked him, I was like, hey, this girl's up here. What do I do? Not really sure how to handle this situation. And I don't know what Gus was doing that day, but he decided to also come up. And so he starts talking to her, and Gus just has this, he's just able to discern things very quickly. And he just started asking her some questions, and very quickly realized we got to it that she was in a very unsafe situation, that she was in an abusive relationship, very controlling relationship, and that her family was also mistreating her as well. And she just kind of broke down and was telling us about it. In that moment, Gustavo was able to just see her where she was at, and to see that these weren't problems to be solved, but she needed to know what Jesus thought of her. And so he shared the love of Jesus and had compassion for her in a way that can only be through the lens and the perspective of Jesus. And in that, we gave her some things, and she decided that she wanted to go to a family member's house that was safe, that somebody that was outside of this. And so my wife decided to drop whatever she was doing, and she came up to the church and drove her back, and they had a conversation on the way down about what it means to follow Jesus. And I think even in that small thing of compassion, I think it's hard sometimes that we don't always get to see the end of it, that she didn't have a phone. She didn't have anything on her. It had all been taken from her. And so we don't really know what happened. We didn't get to see her journey through to its end. But I think the important thing here is that when the opportunity comes up to show compassion, to have the perspective of Jesus, that we're ready. No matter how small it is, no matter how little it may feel to us, or we wish we could do more, that Jesus asks us to be faithful, to see people from his perspective, and to show compassion regardless of the situation. You know, it's not about how much we are able to do. It's that, are we being faithful with what he is putting in front of us? You know, what might our lives look like if we're able to remind ourselves more, if you're able to change your perspective to be like that of Jesus's, that you'd be able to have life, or that you'd be able to give hope to other people? How might the lives of others around you be changed by seeing it in this way? And so today, as we close our service, I want to invite you to pray with us after service, to worship here together, and to take an invitation into his perspective.